Welcome to Cut the Bull, an insightful podcast which addresses the news of the day and the cultural issues plaguing our society, bringing logic and context to these topics and discussing solutions too real for mainstream pundits. Now, here are your hosts, Charles Love, Shemeka Michelle, and Wilfred Riley.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love alongside my co-host Shemeka Michelle, and Will is knocking on the door. Our guest this week is Denisha Merriweather. She is the Director of Public Relations and Content Marketing at the American Federation for Children and founder of Black Minds Matter. Denisha, welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, thanks guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you. We talk about education a lot. And that's definitely your wheelhouse, but people bring different experiences, different knowledge bases, different ideas, they speak their truth. So I wanted to have you on to kind of tell us, kind of your evolution, why it's important, why you started to work in education and what you're working on now. So kind of give us a little history on, why you think this is important and what your experience is like. I know you talked about your private school experience, and talk about, how that happened and why you think education is so important.
Yeah, I always tell people I was thrust into the field of education reform because, I went to a private school on a tax credit scholarship in Florida, and that really changed my life. And I don't say it as a cliche, like it really, really did. I went to my local public school from kindergarten to 5th grade. And I failed the 3rd grade twice because I couldn't read. I took the assessment at the end of 3rd grade. If you don't pass the reading exam, you either go to summer school or you repeat the grade. I did not come from a great home environment. I lived with my biological mother at the time, and she did not value education. I'll just say that in a nutshell. Never went to summer school, repeated the 3rd grade. That happened twice. And even in the 4th grade, I was admitted into this program called the STAR program. And that was designed for students who were like me, 2, 3, 4 grade levels behind in elementary school. And I didn't pass that program. And so for me, I really hated school. And the only reason why I thought that I needed to go to school was because so that my mom wouldn't go to jail, because that had actually happened before. She had been locked up because she didn't let us go. She didn't want us to, or she just didn't feel like taking us to school. And so this whole time from K to 5th, I didn't see the meaning behind school. I just knew I would be a high school dropout. I would probably have a baby as a teenager, and that would be my life. I knew I would have a job because I always liked my own money. And so I knew I'd probably have like a part-time job or something like that, like working at McDonald's. And it wasn't until the summer before my 6th grade year that I began to live permanently with my godmother. And it was my godmother who wanted to find a good school environment for me. Her church had just started a private school. She didn't have a way to pay for it. And she heard about the Florida tax credit scholarship. She applied for the scholarship. I got accepted. And that's when everything changed. I had gone to about 4 or 5 different elementary schools. And now I was going to this private Christian school with full uniform, beret, bow tie, stockings, pleated skirt. It was, intense. We were definitely that type of private school. I even had patent leather shoes. And that was not a part of the requirement, but my godmother, she was older, and so she wanted me to wear them.
Take it over the top.
Exactly. Thankfully, penny loafers were black and white, and we had to have all black shoes. So those were out of the question. But
wait a minute, we're going to get into, I hate to cut you off there, but I have to, because you're not that old. So when you talked about your experience before getting into the private school, I don't know if I saw wheels turning in Shemeka's mind, but I know, what stood out was, I know when people hear the story of you failing 3rd grade twice, they're probably like, how? That's so bad. It's good she turned that around, which is all good. My mind thinks differently. I'm like, I don't know if a kid could fail third grade twice now, because they pass everyone alone.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's bad that you failed twice, but I'm kind of like, well, good for them for plucking you. You couldn't read. I'm glad you failed because now they just let you read at the second grade level in 11th grade and then give you a diploma and push you out the door.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, what was there something different about the school district you were in? Obviously, there's negatives to it because they couldn't figure out what you needed to help you succeed. So I'm not giving them great kudos, but at the same time, maybe it was just a different time. But I'm kind of taken by the fact that they noticed it. They made some attempt to do it between the summer school and that program in fourth grade, because I see a lot now of it's just not right to separate kids. They have these books in elementary school, right? So they put all the kids in the same class, but they got these lettered books as if it's like sports, as if the kids don't know. Well, I'm reading the J and that guy over there is still on A. They know, but they're all in the same classroom, reading at different levels, and they're giving them these books. But when you talk about how do you get the guy on A and B to the O, it's like, well, you have to understand what's happening at his house. You have to understand what it's like being Black. You have to understand, they add all these other things, which may be important and may be part of the factor, but at the end of the day, are you helping him read better?
Yeah.
And it seems like they just passed him along. So why do you think they failed you?
Well, in Florida, so it is a Florida thing. So it is a statewide policy that was implemented under the Bush era. And so
it was one of those racist Republicans. not passing you through when you can't read.
Yeah. So it is, implemented via legislation. So if a student is not proficient in reading in the third grade, they will, they have to be remediated unless they take those courses and make up that work during the summer. And so that is a part of the Florida. So there's a third grade test, state test. If they're not reading on level, that's what happened.
Okay.
So what's happening right now in Baltimore, for instance, where you have these kids who are graduating valedictorian of their class with a 1.2 GPA and reading on a second grade kindergarten level. At least you'll be reading at a fourth grade level, in Florida. If they passed you along to high school and you graduated from high school, at least you would be reading on a fourth grade level, because you have to pass that reading assessment portion in the third grade.
Well, I noticed that I interrupted you before you got into your private school experience and that kind of thing, but that was just, I stood out and I wanted to make sure we focus on that. Shemeka, do you want to say anything about the third grade double flunker here before we move on to private school?
No, well, I'm trying to focus on just the education part, because of course, my mind goes to, well, what type of woman was your mother? Why did she, like I go into wanting to know more about her. Where was your father? How many siblings did you have? How did she let this happen?
Yeah, you get the two of us together, we're gonna go deep. So
no, and I think those are valid conversations, and that question specifically is constantly in the mix when people talk about choice. Like, they always say you got to have an involved parent, and these parents don't care about their kids enough to make those choices for their kids, to put their kids in a high quality school. Like, they're not going to take that effort. And I'm like, you're right. You do have parents. Like, I am a product of a teen mom. She was 16 years old when she had me, I was her oldest child, who wanted to still live her life, got married to an older man, had more kids, and still wanted to live her life. Didn't really care about education, didn't care at all about that. Wanted to
drop out of high school?
Yeah, she dropped out of high school. A lot of my biological family members have dropped out of high school. So it is, I would say, yeah. So people who propose that, oh, we're not going to support this because of, uninvolved parents or parents who are neglectful. It's like, you're right, but I am a product of someone. It wasn't a biological parent at all. This is literally, my godmother is not even a church ordained godmother. She's just like some random person in the community who's like, this child, no, I'm going to see by this child right here. And so I think you're right. Like, it does pose a lot of questions. And it is a cool, I've come across other students who've benefited from school choice across the country who've also had similar stories where it's not their biological mom or dad, it was their grandmama, their auntie, someone who took the time to make sure that education was valued in their life. And I think that's what's really important. But yeah, to your like observation, yeah, my mom still has some issues. And my siblings, my youngest sister, she's 3 grade levels behind. She's still working on her high school diploma.
Oh, wow.
And so it begs the question of, nature versus nurture. But I can't say that my godmother had all the answers. All she knew was, I need to put you in a different environment.
Right.
And it was up to the teachers really at this new school was what really impacted and changed my outlook on education and everything. Because like I said, I went to 4 to 5 different elementary schools. I can't recall but one teacher who actually cared about me enough to try to help me get up to grade level in all of my subjects. So it was both. It was a home issue and a schooling issue. And it was like no one was really trying to help in that situation.
So
I
talk
have
about
one last question.
Go ahead,
I'm
Shemeka.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
This older man that she married,
Shemeka's son.
where was he and what was he doing? What purpose was he serving? Like, he took care of y'all?
Yeah, his purpose was to provide some money in some, socially unacceptable ways. And I should say the Merriweather, so my maiden name is Merriweather, and the Merriweathers are known on the east side of Jacksonville. And I'll leave that at that. So
now I gotta find somebody from Jacksonville.
What'd you say, Shemeka?
I said, now I gotta find somebody from Jacksonville.
I'll give you a number when we're done. But I was going to talk about that experience. I mean, obviously it had to be vastly different from where you've been. So you can talk a bit about what the experience was like and what you noticed and that kind of thing. But you talked about that teacher that really took an interest in you. But what else? What was different about this school from the 4 or 5 other schools that you had gone to?
Yeah, the summer before I even started, teachers met with me one-on-one to get me up to a little bit of speed on just what the school was going to be like, my reading. I didn't know my times tables, not even by memory. And so they worked with me over the summer before I even started at this small private school. And when I came into, this school, I'm on defense. So I'm not even going to sugarcoat and say I was the best student and oh, woe is me, I can't read and I'm, nobody cares about me. No, like I had my defense mechanisms up. Like if I was changing to another school, I already know that, okay, well, this teacher, I'm not about to respect you. I'm only going to be here for 2 days and I'm gone. Like, it don't really matter. I'm not invested. In this school, I had my guard up and that completely came down. The first thing that I noticed is like every single day past the first week of school, these teachers were at the door smiling at me, hugging us, praying for us. It wasn't just, this is the first week of school, we're so excited to see you. It lasted every single day till I graduated. Wow. Another thing I noticed was that when I never raised my hand to read out loud, but when reading out loud, teacher would call on me and she wouldn't move until I finished my portion of the paragraph or whatever. I remember sitting in class, like hyperventilating, crying, sobbing, like begging, please, like, I can't do this. Like, let me go someplace, like go to a different student. That didn't happen before. If I wasn't able to get through 1 or 2 words reading out loud, the teachers would, okay, somebody else read. Like, let's just go somebody else. Finish it off, this student. Another thing was the students, like, they never laughed at me. They never poked fun at me. You have to imagine, like, I'm like looking around, like, if I see you laughing, I'm gonna tell you about yourself. Like, I know you're not talking. That's why and that never happened. Never. Right. So the entire environment was totally different. And the first 9 weeks.
Shemeka to tears.
No, my eyes itching.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like someone finally did it.
You're so silly.
I'm sorry, go on.
She's like, now my eyes itching. But yeah, and so I would say, like, and then by the first 9 weeks, like, I went from making D's and F's consistently to A's and B's. And it wasn't some social promotion type deal. Like, I was where I really had to work at it. And I ended up moving up a grade level, graduating with honors, taking dual enrollment while still in high school, being, third in my class. And I really went from thinking that I was a failure, that I was stupid and I was dumb, to realizing that I wasn't a failure. The public school system had really failed me. And that's when I got involved in this work. I got the scholarship. They were looking for people with success stories, and my school was like, Denisha, like, she's really had a turnaround. And I looked at my own family, biological family, because I was the only one out of my 5 siblings to go to a different school, to go to a different environment, to leave home and have something different. And they didn't have the same opportunity that I had. I saw people in my community, and I really was just like, I'm really not that special. I'm not that smart. So what made me different? How was I able to graduate from high school and go to college and get a master's degree? And I really had to credit it to education. And so that's kind of where that's how I got involved and just became really passionate about this issue.
Now, I got a question. Surprised that Shemeka didn't bring it up. Shame on her, because this is perfect. So you talked about the opportunity you had that your siblings didn't have in some of the neighborhood because the schools were bad, and you got an opportunity through this tax credit to go to this private school. Great story. We hear it often. But we're missing a piece here. She talked about the man and your mom, but you stayed with the godmother. You were living with her.
Yeah.
So what made your mom just let you, of the 5 siblings, or how many, 3 at the time?
Really going deep.
She's just like, all right, fine, you can stay with her and go to private school. See you.
Well, no, it was not that easy.
Right.
It was, so I was 13, I was 2 years old. So I was 13 in the 5th grade in that summer. And I basically told my biological mother, like, I can't do this. Like, I'm leaving. Wow. And so, yeah, I left home and I left home at 13. So, and went to live with my godmother. And so she had tried before, when I was younger, to get joint custody and all this stuff. But the court system, they're not always that great, and failed. And so by when I turned 13, I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. And she's like, well, you're of the age now. You can actually say it and have some, stake in the game. So I did. And I did that. So at 13, and that's how I was able to stay with her full time, without, any, and it was not that easy. She told me the bleep bleep and all that stuff, and bleep bleep bleep. But I had freedom, which was amazing.
Has she come back around? I know this is about education, but again, I had a foster child who came to stay with me her 10th grade year. And at the time when I met with the school, they didn't think she was going to graduate. And we really worked hard, and she actually did. I was wondering, like, did your biological mom come back around at any point? Was she there when you graduated? Did she want to, take any credit for that, or did she just continue to stay away?
I would say no. She pretty much kind of stayed away. I created boundaries because, I realized that it wasn't, from an early age, when you're exposed to so much trauma, you kind of mature way faster. So we already knew, like, well, I knew I can't really be. So she did come to my graduation, my high school graduation. Never tried to take credit for it because she would have been shut down immediately, like by me, like, ma'am, you cannot at all say it. No, that was not you. She's definitely proud, I would say, and flaunts that banner of like being the biological mother. But so yeah, I would say she's still living her life. But I got my master's in social work, kind of try to make sense of all the craziness that happened in my life and what I saw happening in other kids' lives, because my story is not unique to where I grew up. And so yeah, I definitely recognize she's on her own journey, life journey, and just that role assignment as mother is, we put so much stake on that. And I don't necessarily put that role assignment to her as being my mother. I definitely do refer to her as my biological mom because she gave birth to me, but like my mother was my godmother. Like, she's my mom. That's
right.
And so it definitely took some time. And my godmother never was toxic in a way of like, you better, your mama this, she would always try to encourage that relationship. And it was mostly like me, like, I know I know these boundaries need to be there because, yeah.
So then I have a question. So a lot of times we hear that being Black is, we're oppressed because we're Black. And what keeps us down is our skin color. Well, obviously, you're still Black. And it seems what made the difference was not your skin color, your environment really played a big part in. Once that changed, you were able to get a better education. And so the education was different, the environment was different, and you succeeded. So your skin color was not what held you back, because that never changed.
Yeah, definitely. I went from an all Black community that was decrepit, depleted, at a deficit, just poverty stricken to the max, where people walked around aimlessly without hope, without any prospects, to another all Black community that was totally different. So like, it's not like I went to this prestigious all white school with, white students. No, the church, all Black, the token whites and the token Hispanics, was the case. And the school was founded by our Black pastor. She was a Black woman who founded this school. All of the students were also Black. And it was such a stark contrast because, I went from poverty environment to, what we're trying to, swindle the government so we can get some more welfare money and food, food stamps, and selling those to, so that was this is a maxillofacial surgeon, and he just, one of the top maxillofacial surgeons in Jacksonville, Florida, and he was sitting right there, here's the lawyer, here's the business person, literally everyone in the church, which is a church school, so everybody just work and you see them all the time.
Right.
And so that was the environment that I moved from. So it was never a Black, issue. And I always tell people I never grew up, with racism. I never knew that, concept of racism all throughout high school until I went away to college. That's when I really was exposed to prejudice and racism. And I went to school in Floribama in Pensacola. And that's when I was like, oh, wait, oh, snap, people are really being like, because I look like this. But all before then, it never was like a Black issue. It was class. It was literally a class issue. It was never about just because, oh, I'm this way because I'm Black.
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, this is a side note conversation, but it's a great conversation and people will love it. I think that's really important, and people don't talk about that a lot. The racism piece is that when you experience it, kind of dictates how you internalize it or not, right? So if you're told when you're young that this is this big thing and this heavy thing, and look in the future, you're going to see this man's going to do this, you start looking for this man because they're telling you about it. But you went through life and not to a certain age and not experience it. So when you experience, obviously you had issues with it. So depending on how extreme it was, it bothered you. But you look at it like, I know it's not the norm, right? Because,
Exactly.
I'm 18 years old and this is not how people are. Something's wrong with that guy, right?
Yeah.
But if you saw, it's just like in the previous life before you went to live with your godmother, you saw this despair kind of thing. If you stayed there, you think that was the norm. You would not know that there were surgeons and lawyers and educators and people who were successful because you didn't see them. So, and that's right. that I think that's part of that environment. And it's important to take people out of their environment.
And I will also mention that, during that same time, not only did my godmother put me in a different school environment, but what I often don't talk about is she found an after school program for me called the Police Athletic League. And so my concept on everything was just kind of flipped on its head. And this is a after school program where police officers are just like with you, all the time in uniform, playing sports with you, getting you popsicles, taking you to, and I stayed with that program until grad school. Every summer I was a camp counselor at PAL, won National PAL Girl of the Year. And so all of what you're saying is totally correct. Like I didn't have all of these preconceived notions about things writ large. It was that person, this event, and it was a benefit. Like I look back and I'm very appreciative of how, I grew up later in my childhood because it gave me a new perspective on life. And I didn't have this hard, this hardcore and viewing myself and my people as being a consequence of anything. It's,
I think that's one thing that's unique and rare that the three of us. So Shemeka and I have talked about this before, so this would be new. So we're just telling you stuff that we know, but you don't know. But so the three of us have similar backgrounds in that case because we all went to Shemeka and I, Shemeka thought she could beat me with the number of white students she went to school with, but I think I won. So we all grew up in all Black neighborhoods, mostly poor or working class, right? But we didn't have that, I guess, the normal, unfortunate view on race for various reasons. And for me, I grew up in Gary, Indiana. I'm looking to see if you wince because people make a face when I usually say where I'm from. But
y'all had some problems in recent years.
A little. But here's the thing that's unique that most people don't think about. So when I tell them, I say, oh, when I grew up, because Shemeka and Will keep reminding me I'm old. Mm-hmm. So when I grew up, we were in high school at the same time. Don't play. When I grew up, when I grew up in Gary, what was different? So you think everybody knows DC? They used to call it Chocolate City in Atlanta and all that. So wrap your mind around this. There was a higher percentage of Blacks in Gary than in those cities, New Orleans, DC, Atlanta. So everybody was Black. I mean, you have the occasional neighbor who was a senior, didn't move out, the occasional teacher who stayed, but basically everybody was Black. Yeah. Now, people understand certain things about it, but they don't think it all the way through. So yes, there was, crime and poverty and all this kind of stuff. And I saw some of that, right? So every homeless person I saw was Black, and every drug dealer I saw was Black, and every criminal I saw was Black.
Yeah.
But also, every doctor and every lawyer I saw was Black. The chief of police was Black. The principal was Black. The dean was Black. All the teachers were Black. Everybody, all the successful people I saw were Black. So you don't get the mindset that Black is oppressed or that Black is great. So when you try to sell me that we're a special type and we're better than everybody else, I'm like, what about that hobo over there?
That's
And
right.
and Larry, who's always getting in trouble. But if you say Black people are oppressed, I'm like, but I know I'm poor, but I still know 5 doctors.
That's
Right.
right.
People talk about, well, you couldn't go to a Black doctor. Everybody I knew went to a Black doctor because the
Right.
town was insulated. Right. So now what you take from that is on you, because I have friends to this day that I grew up with that are as pro-Black as all white people are racist, as this system won't allow us any opportunity as anybody else. But I'm like, but I grew up with you. So I
Right.
know how you grew up. So I know that is not the case. And I know you're successful because you went to college and you made it out and you're successful, yet you're still talking about, because what they do is they talk in theory, they talk in hypotheticals, because the mind is as an interesting way of taking in information. So just we make fun of white liberals for watching all these movies and watching the news and having this preconceived these prejudices about Black people. But what do you think a Black person would do if every time they saw a movie it was a slave and a pimp?
Yeah.
Right.
You don't think after some period they're gonna be like, well, I know I'm not a slave and pimp, but maybe all the rest of the Black people are slaves and pimps.
Maybe the rest of them.
I mean, not me, of course, but I mean, for
Yeah.
everybody else. Because that's what I see. Every time you turn on the local news, there's a perp walk. The perp is Black. So if you don't have it in your mindset, based in logic, looking around and saying these are individuals, you can get to a point where it's already broken and it's hard to fix it. And you just think individual is bad. Individual is a right-wing talking point. The
Right.
individual is something the founders would say. Real Black people won't say individual, we're collective. I'm like, I don't want to be a collective with some of these people.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's important to say, because rarely do you have like everybody on the panel with a similar experience. Not the same, obviously, but no one's saying that because of these experiences, I walked away thinking this negative thing about white people, or also thinking this full-on oppression of Blacks, right? Nobody, I mean, I never saw that. Nobody ever taught it. My schools were about as pro-Black as any of the schools they want schools to be today, but it wasn't called that, right? It was just positive, right? So when they taught stuff, they taught history, they taught slavery, they taught Jim Crow, but they taught Black excellence. And you can't do one without the other. You're missing a piece. And today, there's this heavy focus on oppression and not Black excellence. And it's odd because Shemeka and I, when we say things, I don't know about you, but we say things and we get attacked for it. I just had somebody on Twitter tell me that I hate myself and I hate Black people. Have you ever seen my show? I literally talk about teaching Black excellence. I literally talk about all the Black leaders and successful people that we don't hear about because you only talk about the other people. I want to talk about all the things that people have done. You want to talk about the oppression, but I'm the bad guy. So it's just funny. So I want to make sure people understand it. 3 Black people grew up in Black neighborhoods. Don't hate whitey. Don't think Black people are oppressed. Don't hate America. It can happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we got to get back to education. So how did you get involved? Yeah, we went around, but we got back on the road. We're on the road. We're coming on the on-ramp. How did you get involved in trying to affect change? Like starting with the Secretary of Education. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I would say when I graduated from high school, I went to college, went to grad school. It was still kind of an alter ego. Like if I was called upon to go to a conference to share about my experience, to champion for more options, I would do that and kind of go, back to my silo. In Florida, I decided to, I guess, make it an alter ego. When the teachers union sued the program, they sued it twice. And so I got involved, then was the MC for one of the largest rallies in Florida, where it was parents and students from across Florida who.
Wait a minute now, you got to make it clear for people who don't understand. They sued the program that you used to get to where you were. Just make it clear. Right. So they wanted to get rid of that terrible, bad program that got you out of the bad schools, and they've sued to eliminate that program.
That's right. And it went all the way up to Florida Supreme Court. The court system eventually struck it down and said that it was constitutional. And they dismissed the case, I should say. But during that time, it was then that I kind of began to get my ear. This is high school, I should say. So in high school, that's when that happened. Teachers Union Student Program was the MC for the rally. Kind of still, I would say mentally, this was not something that I was internally passionate about. It was just kind of therapeutic, to be honest. I'm not even gonna lie. It was like I'm talking about my experience over and over and over again. This is allowing me to get closure. And it wasn't until they sued it the second time, and simultaneously, Charlie Crist, he was governor. When I was in high school, he was a Republican governor.
Yeah.
He signed the expansion bill into law to expand the scholarship program that I benefited from. I was at the Capitol right behind him. I got the signing pin. I still keep it because I'm like, this man is trash. And
keep it just in case I see him. I can
exactly jab him with it. He ran again as a Democrat and said that they were pulling his hands. He didn't want to support the program.
I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's when my ears perked up. At that same time, the teachers union had sued the program again, and we were filming this commercial. This is when I became passionate about it. One, I was upset with that he had done that, and then at the same time, we were filming this commercial to drop the suit. So I came to my old school, had some elementary school students, in the background that was at the school. And it's a K through 12 private school, 100 kids. So everybody know everybody. So everybody knew me. These little kids, they already know me. And their job was to sit in the background and basically pretend like they're doing work while I'm looking at the camera filming this video saying, drop the suit. And one of the little boys, afterwards, he's like, wait, Denisha, like, am I going to get kicked out? Like, am I going to get kicked out of my school? And that's when it kind of hit me like, okay, this is more than just me. This is more than just like this impacted my life. This is really like serious. And so that's when I became passionate about it. Started after grad school. I went to work for Secretary DeVos at the U.S. Department of Education, and I decided I'm not gonna go get licensed in social work and do this career that's gonna make me $2. I'm gonna make education reform my full-time job. And so I worked with at the U.S. Department of Education for 2 years, and then went over to work with the American Federation for Children right after that, and been with them for the past almost going on 3 years.
Let me ask you a question. Shemeka, you can get in if you like, but because we're gonna pack this in. This is gonna be one of my favorite episodes. I love talking about education. So I think you need to tell the people why. Obviously it's not you because you think it's crazy, but why? What was the argument the union was making as to why they went after this program twice? Because we hear all this stuff in education now. Everything we do from teaching more slavery to dropping grades because it's racist to give people grades. What if the Black kid gets a lower grade? To get rid of SAT, everything they're doing it for you. They're doing it to make your opportunities better. They're doing it to make your life better. They're doing it because you're not really equal with the whites, but if we take away the measurements, you won't know it, right? So this is all benevolence that they're doing. So what was their argument for sending that kid out of that school back to a failing school?
Yeah, so the argument at first was the state, we're supposed to fund a uniform system of education. And then on top of, under that is, we're funding religious schools. And we're not supposed to be funding religious schools, at all. And all of these schools, they look different. Some of them are accredited, some of them aren't accredited, some of them aren't taking the state assessment. So under that uniformity clause, they sued the program, the first time. They said no, because the money is not going to schools. The money is going to parents, and then parents are picking those schools to whatever type of school they want to go to. They can go to a Muslim, school, then go to Jewish school, then go to a
But
private.
they're not particularly supporting a religion. It's like, that's
They're
just
not.
the school that the parent picked.
That's the school that the parent picked. And so that was the rationale for the decision. That time they tried to suit the program again, and to be honest, I forget what their merit was on that one, and I don't want to tell your listeners something that is false, but the first time around it was under the uniformity clause of, all schools, we're supposed to fund one form of education, and that doesn't fit it because of all these reasons.
When you were at the Department of Ed, what, if anything, did you see that, being a little bit closer to this, that was happening on the education front that you did not know about, that like really was shocking to you? You're like, which thing?
I know. I would say it was the most depressing place to be. The Department of Education, like, I am definitely of the belief, I know people are like, oh, we should keep the U.S. Department of Education afloat. Like, no, it can burn to the ground. It really can. I mean,
they can just close it, Denise, and they don't have to burn it to the ground.
No, some things you just don't need. Some
I don't need it either. I just don't want you to burn it. I just want you to close it, lock the doors, maybe sell off
right
the
now,
assets.
if you go to DC, in front of the department, which wasn't there when I first started, is a beautiful like courtyard area. They can just burn the building and expand that courtyard.
There you go. A nice courtyard. Right, there you go.
Yeah, but I would say I came from right out of grad school. So you have to think, I came from high school, went directly to college, went directly to undergrad, went directly to grad school, to working at the federal government. So one of the things that shocked me was just how bureaucratic it was. I knew bureaucracy, that term, but to be in it every day, all day, and just the life of innovation is literally sucked out of everything. There is no such thing as, quote unquote, being innovative and creative. Like, if you're innovative and creative, it has to go through 150,000 steps. And by that time, it's not innovation, and so I think that's the thing that shocked me the most. The second thing that shocked me was just the sheer amount of career staff who were working at the Department of Education, who did not really care about education.
Right.
It was just a job, and it was, mostly retired military folks who got priority to work at the federal government so they can increase their pension, and they never would get fired. It was really hard. One of the things that the secretary did, Secretary DeVos did when she got in office, which a lot of people focus on the school choice stuff because that's, what she's known for. But there was a policy where every employee could work from home 4 days out of the week. So for 4 days, you could this is beyond COVID.
Pre-COVID, right?
Pre-COVID.
Wow.
Be at home for 4 days and come into the office at 1. And she changed that. You can imagine their union representatives like, no, some people have to take care of their kids. Some people have to, take care of their elderly parents. It's like, actually, some people have to work.
Right. You're supposed to be working.
What do the rest of us do with kids and elderly parents?
Yeah.
You should have worked for the federal government.
No, really. So I would say that really shocked me as well. Like, just the sheer number of people who were not interested in doing a job. One of the highest paid employees at the U.S. Department of Education at the time was a photographer who did not even do that. She scrapbooked all day, every day. You could find her in the library with other staff members during work hours, scrapbooking.
Wow.
And so I say that because the complacency and just that culture that we have with admin staff literally starts at the very top. And so it's kind of hard to hold, not hard, but you put that pressure on administrations in the state and local districts, it's like, it's false. It's a facade, because that's not even the case at the federal level. Yeah, it was and the place is just not very attractive. So yeah, the federal government, I don't see a place in, especially in K through 12 education. Really just the loan office for higher ed is what, could do, it should do. But as far as that, it was definitely a great experience. But the bureaucracy is heavy, and yeah.
I was going to say something about the department that some people may not know that would shock them, but Shemeka, was there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I'm just wondering, like, so how would education work in the US if we burned it down to the ground?
Well, that's a perfect segue, Denisha, before you get there. Perfect segue.
Yeah.
Perfect segue before you get there, because I was going to ask you, Shemeka, you know me. I don't like put people on the spot together, but it's just interesting because it's just every man. Do you know what the Department of Education does?
No.
That's it. Most people don't. I didn't know until about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, because I just assumed, like a lot of people, obviously they got school stuff they do. They're the Department of Education.
Right. That's what I would
But
think.
their
Besides
mission,
the loans.
Right. But if you go to their mission, it says something about their mission is to foster education. That's kind of vague. But they make it clear, well, we don't open schools. Okay, so they don't own any of the buildings. And we don't write curriculum. So what do we do? Right? So they suggest, they basically, their primary thing is to, Denisha can tell you better than me, but their primary thing is not to educate kids. It is to collect the data on what schools are doing, so they can put out papers and saying, this is what schools are doing. This is what we think works based on this. It's stats. You got to.
So they don't regulate the curriculum?
No. Actually, it's kind of barred to do that. To make any recommendation is bully pulpit. So when under the Obama administration, and where it's No Child Left Behind, that was all recommendation in a white letter. And those do get interpreted because the federal government does have that weight of
and they have money, right? So you say, that's when Obama said, you do the bathroom thing or we're going to pull your funding. So they got a carrot and the stick, but from the core of what they're supposed to do, they don't write curriculum, they don't educate people, they don't buy books, they don't build schools. So what do we need them for? And the last piece is fairly new. So it's 79. So you say, what would the kids do before that? I mean, I think kids in 5th grade in 1950 were reading Latin.
Yeah. And they started during that timeline for civil rights. So the Office of Civil Rights, that's where they, began to make sure that, okay, well, we need to ensure that schools in America are, all of these cases for racial, cases have somewhere to go, somewhere to live. And we're actually doing our due diligence to investigate them. That expanded to gender cases. And so basically anything that could be under the civil rights, but 9% of our education dollars, 8 to 9% comes from the federal government. Everything else comes from our state and local taxes. And so in those budgets, so we really K through 12 wise, so we really don't get a lot from the federal government. Now all of the title grants and stuff, Title I for low income schools, that comes from the federal government, but all of those monies accumulated together make up 8 to 9% of the overall education budget for schools and school districts. And they barely do so and so I would say in all those, every secretary can make priorities, which is what the secretary did under her reign of, if you do XYZ, you can get priority in these title programs. So if you are opening up your doors to private schools to access your services, we'll give you a priority in this grant, which is but for the most part, higher ed is the predominant use of the federal government, which Pell Grant, all the GI.
But I finally found it, Shemeka, so let me read it to you. It says the department, and keep in mind, 4,400 employees, $86 billion budget.
Yeah.
The department identifies 4 key functions. Establishing policies on federal financial aid for education and distributing as well, and monitoring those funds. Okay. Collecting, you can do a treasury or some financial department that can handle that. Collecting data on America's schools and disseminating research. Focusing national attention on key education issues. Like what? Just issues though, just focusing on issues. And prohibiting discrimination and ensuring equal access. But we already have a Civil Rights Act and other departments that handle equal treatment. That's what that department is for. Can we burn it down now, Shemeka?
With the 86, what?
$86 billion and 4,400 employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it serves to just kind of pay people to stay at home.
Move some paper around.
Yeah.
You know, give somebody some clout, carry some weight. It does that stuff really well. You know, loans and money, which people are already complaining about. We should just, you know, waive all these loans because we don't.
And doesn't do that well, you know, doesn't do that well of giving out money and.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Right.
So there, yeah.
But we got to get to you. We got to get to what we do, solutions. I like to talk about solutions. You can talk about Black Minds Matter. I want to go back to something you said earlier because I wanted to save the solutions to the end. But you were talking about when the union sued your program the first time, they were talking about, well, they use a lot of stuff. Well, you're funding religion. But you also mentioned accreditation. And that is interesting in that because it goes back to what they're supposed to do. Because I'm not totally against the government or some oversight organization creating some kind of uniformity in different organizations, and education could be one of them. But let's face it, just like the academy, the Department of Ed, and a lot of this stuff has been taken over by people with a strong ideological bend. It's not just like, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, but I want the kids to get the best education. Everything is seen through the lens of their politics, right? So we talk about schools and how bad they are, woke and all this stuff, but very few people go after the accreditation. And a lot of these organizations that give these accreditations are flawed on their face. So if we're judging the school based on having an accreditation from an organization that's flawed, then where is that really leading you? So I want to know what we can do. You know, you can talk about, again, definitely talk about your organization, but how much of the problem is that people talk about systemic racism. There are systemic problems in our institutions, but so we can't really improve education, criminal justice, all these other things when the people who are tasked to implement change, improvements, manage the shift are doing that based on their political bend. It's the way our president can get up on 5 days in and say, I'm gonna write this executive order, so everything we do is gonna be based on race. I'm not even saying that as a Black man, if they're gonna give me special protection, that's great. Whether I think it's not, I mean, cool, I'll take it. You'll throw me some money, I'll take that too. But it may not be the best course of action to improve things across the board for the most people in most places. And if that's the only place you look for a solution, you're never gonna find the solutions that are outside that space. So give us any insight you can on how those issues of the institution are compounding the problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just, this same night, that we did the show, don't know where it's gonna air, but yeah, same night I did this show, I hosted earlier today a masterminds call with school founders, and we do this every month. The topic for today was accreditation / accountability measures for choice schools. And one of the things, yeah, right, one of the things that, you know, everyone had varied beliefs in, you know, about, you know, what their accountability should be. But one person brought out, you know, how are we going to, for the accreditation part for independent private schools, how are we going to have an accreditation agency where most of the people don't look like us, don't know our background, us being Black people, and have the same standards look like public schools? And so who's creating these measures, who's developing these measures, and how are the measures that they've created different from what we're trying to escape from, what we're trying to be solely different from, and or any people that look like us at that table. And I thought that was an interesting concept that I never, thought about before, because I am not opposed to accreditation. I think that any system should have some level of accountability. If that's accreditation, if that's a robust board, that you are actively reporting to, if that's your, parents and students. And so I'm pretty agnostic, but it was pretty interesting to hear the different beliefs of these school founders. Some said, no, stay out of my house, stay out of my backyard. We don't need you. Let us do our own thing. Some said, yes, I'm going through accreditation right now, and I think it's important. Not that one particular person said she didn't think that it should be mandated for all schools, because you do have to pay for that. So unlike charter schools where that, you replace your your autonomy with accountability, private schools, you have the choice, to go down that path. And if you do have the choice to do it and you choose to be accredited, you have to pay for that. So yeah, I'm pretty agnostic. I believe in freedom in all of the areas. I think we should have schools should be accountable to somebody. They shouldn't just be out doing what they want to do just because, oh, I want to do it. However, that's what homeschooling is. Like, if you want to do that, just say you're homeschooling. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Well, your call, when you talked about the call, so this is part of your organization. So talk about the organization you started, Black Minds Matter.
Yeah. So started Black Minds Matter with an op-ed in 2020. Wrote an op-ed called Black Minds Matter. This was during the height of the riots and the protests when George Floyd was
the riots.
Yeah.
The peaceful protests, you mean?
I said both. I said riots and protests. That's how I keep myself in the you hear whichever one you want, but I say them both at the same time. So
good answer.
And the protests,
right.
And that was, happening across the country, well, across the world, really. And I was frustrated because I saw what really hit me was the Aunt Jemima syrup and pancake mix. And people were so floored about that, upset, oh, we got to change this because that's rooted in racism. This was racist, and they had bad intentions when they created this syrup and this pancake mix, and we need to change it.
It even tasted racist.
Right. And they did. They got it changed, and now it's the Pearl Miller Company. And what really, what really frustrated me was we did all of this, and we didn't even focus on all of these other institutions that are inherently really racist, and we didn't talk about it. We didn't even focus one eyeball inch on it. And of course, education is really passionate to me, and that was it for me. It's all a facade of morality, and we didn't focus one iota on saying we have a problem. Not even there was not even a little bit of traction on, there seems to be a problem in the education system, and we have the school to prison pipeline, which we've coined because it's happening so many times. And we see this trend line. We have national statistics from the Department of Education that say that 15% of Black students are reading on grade level and 13% are doing math on grade level. And nobody's focusing on that.
Because it's the white man's fault. To me, it seems like that's what the focus is. Our students are not doing well because the white man has set it up for them to not do well.
But that wasn't even being said. We weren't putting blame on nobody. We just weren't saying anything.
Well, when I see them talk about the prison to pipeline, people Tariq Nasheed, or I do see people talk about it, the focus is always that the system, that the white man put in place, we can't achieve that. And you're a prime example that we can, and that the white man is not the issue. There's some other issues as to why our students aren't doing as well as they can.
Right, but that's the reason why I reply to them, but I don't even get in that argument. I just assume they're right. So the white man set up the system deliberately for us to fail. But enough of you have not failed that you need to shut up and stop that pipeline. Yep. If there's a school to prison pipeline and they're just pumping the kids in there, and you're like, the white man's he's doing it on purpose. Okay, and I'm with you. Yeah, the white man's doing it on purpose. So you just stand on the sideline and let the kids just keep going to following the pipeline? You don't cut it off? You don't jump in front of it. You don't say, let me find a way to find an off ramp. You just say, oh, well, white man did it. What am I supposed to do? Because they all made it. If you're on MSNBC, you made it. If you're on CNN, you made it, right? Yeah. If you sold 400,000 of your racist books, you made it, right? Yeah. So instead of saying, hey, now that I got your attention, let me teach you, hook you on phonics. No, I'm gonna hook you on slavery, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not even trying to solve the problem. I'm sorry, this is the Black Mind Matter moment.
Minds. No, but I think, even with that perspective, you can go either way. Like, okay, if the system is racist, if the white man has really created a system, which schools in America were not built for us, and I don't believe that this is the public school to prison pipeline, I should say, because when we have schools of choice, we have better outcomes for Black students. Like, that is true. And it's not because, most of the schools who are educating Black students in the choice sector are run by white people. These are Catholic schools that have been doing it for hundreds of years. We now have a lot of diversity in a number of options, which is we have a Black-owned school directory on our website. But to say that the public school system just wants Black students to graduate and succeed, I don't think that that's, a factoid at all. But to say,
and if it was, wouldn't there be a reason to get them out of it real quick?
Exactly. And so if people say,
be on the street corner, just passing out like chiclets, like,
so
take this voucher and get out of that
it's
school.
Such a contradictory issue. Either way someone wants to slice it and dice it, it's like, well, it's choice, even for the folks who say, which is why I coined it Black Minds Matter, because it's, it's kind of an upset on both sides. The progressives are like, oh yeah, we love that, woohoo. And then you're like, school choice. And they're like, oh, and then even on the conservative side, Black Minds Matter. Yeah, we need that more than we need that other stuff. And so it really is kind of however you choose to digest it, that's how you digest it. Which I think is pretty awesome, but really it's like we need education freedom, and whichever way you want to, because even on the progressive side, you say all the time, for us, by us, Ungal Black Power. Well, to own and operate a school is the highest level of empowerment that you can have. We're not champion for people to be, not saying that it's anything wrong with it, but to be Black teachers, in the public school system. No, we're saying, guess what? You can own and found your own school. Well, that's automatically a conversation for education freedom, because you can't own and found a public school. That's going to be a charter school. That's going to be a private, homeschool, co-op, virtual, micro, whatever you want to, launch and start. And so we're in the business of changing the narrative and kind of making people upset on that narrative and challenging the status quo, because if right now we're living in an era where everything is about diversity and inclusion, okay, well, I can step that toe with you, and we're going to have a conversation about school choice, and I'm gonna put it in words that you can understand, because you seem to be closed-minded on everything else. And you're gonna speak my language, and I want you to contradict yourself. Like, I want you to talk yourself into a corner, because that's basically what you're gonna do.
Wow, well, that is awesome. We're gonna have to have you back. I wanted to get into some of the solutions. I think kind of run some ideas by you, but Shemeka went all off on her tangents of mama and
I know,
old
talking
man.
about, so wait a minute, tell me about your stepdaddy.
About that
What
old
is
man. Right, but I think it's going to be informative and people are going to enjoy it and learn a lot. And you were phenomenal. And love to have you back, Denisha, from Black Minds Matter. Don't say lives. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I know the time went by so fast. It's been a pleasure to be on, and thanks for the conversation. It's really awesome.
I got a country to say, God bless the US of A, land of the free and a home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to say, cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving a day.